has taken over. Let's go. It's Ferrall. Coast to coast. Steaks, chicks, stacks. You and I are going to make a lot of money. It's Ferrall, coast to coast.
And we are back, Ferrall, coast to coast, here on a Tuesday, hour number 3 on SportsGrid and SportsGrid Radio. Carver High and Joe Lisi in for Scotty. Of course, every Tuesday and Wednesday, you get the extended version of the very popular SportsGrid Radio show, Carver and Lisi, which airs weeknights at 8 p.m. East on SportsGrid Radio, that being with myself and Joe. All right, Joe, we have a lot to do here in the final hour. Let me finish up with some NBA. Cavs did beat the Clippers last night, 118-108, but I want to talk to you about the Clippers, Joe, even though they lost that game. They have shot up the board here for the odds to win the West. They are now 30-15. They're 2 games back of the top slot. And as you see, now plus 325. They opened at 11-1 last week, plus 425, now plus 325. Are you buying the Clippers maybe, Joe, this year? Now, we do this the last few years. You know, the Kawhi, Paul George Clippers play pretty good through the middle of the year. Now they've added Harden, have Russ for the whole year. Are you buying more this year than in years past that they can actually maybe get the job done when we get to April and May?
Maybe. I love Kawhi and George in the playoffs. It's can they stay together? Well, that's the problem. That's the problem, and now you add in the kryptonite Harden that never wins a big game with a team, right? He's like the human anchor. He brings them down as opposed to bringing them up. I will say the fact that Russ is there too helps with playoff depth. I mean, 11-1 isn't a bad price, right? That's where they were.
That's where they started. Now they're plus 325 to win the West. So if you had them way back when, 11-1, now obviously plus 325. But a lot of teams in the mix there, Joe. You know, you have Minnesota, Denver, Oklahoma City, Phoenix, Sacramento. All of them are only separated by 5 or 6 games. They're between 1 and 6 in the West. So that's the other thing. No, I'm not taking a shot on Phoenix because there's no way that all those guys are going to make it throughout the whole year and actually play in all the games. We welcome in all of our radio affiliates, Ferrall Coast to Coast. On a Tuesday, Carver High and Joe Lisi in for Scotty, SportsGrid Radio, Sirius XM, 159, Sports Byline. Great to have everybody with us here today. The other team, Joe, I wanted to mention with you was the Knicks, who did win again in Charlotte last night, 113-92. They crushed the Hornets. We know Randall's going to be out for a little while. Knicks are 13-2 in the month of January. They have won 7 games in a row. They are now tied for third. They're a couple percentage points behind the Sixers. 30-17 on the year, Joe, and now 11-1 to win the East. They were 20-1 last week. Lots of money starting to pour in. Of course, the Knicks fans are getting excited.
No, I'm not doing it. No way. 11-1 for the Knicks, absolutely not. I don't care how good they are. I'd rather bet on the Heat and Jimmy B and double down on that situation than I would the New York Knicks. I'm sorry, and I know they're playing well right now. You know, your guy Brunson and Julius Randle and the pieces that they've added. Well, you love betting them. Every time it's Brunson.
No, the guy that actually gets me in trouble with the Knicks is DiVincenzo. That's the guy that I get in trouble with. And last night, I played Hart for the double-double, thinking no Randle. Hart get a lot of burn, got a lot of boards. He got the boards. But he only scored 8 points. So I got left on the side. That's because Brunson was a pig and got his usual 30-plus. DiVincenzo was a pig, too. So, is what it, look, they're playing really well, Joe, obviously. I'd like to see – it's the kind of ball that plays in the playoffs. You know, it is the kind of ball. Now, they won a round last year, lost to the Heat in the second round. If that happens again, could they beat the Heat this time? Maybe. They might be a little bit better than them this year. I think they're a little bit better defensively. I think they can score a little bit more. But beating the Celtics and/or the Bucks, I'm not so sure about that part of it, Joe. That's why I'd probably stay away from the 11-1.
No, I don't think they're built. I still like the Heat. I like the Heat, and you know, some of the other teams, I mean, here's the thing. I mean, the Knicks, should they get in, I'd rather bet them on a series-to-series perspective than taking a shot at them right here, right now at 11-1 to win the East. Because they're not going to beat the Bucks. If they have to match, or Philly. They're not matching up against them. And we know,
I think they could beat Philly.
I agree with you. Oh,
I think they could beat Philly.
With Embiid? No way.
Here's why, Joe. Philly always loses.
Yeah, but they're going to lose to the Knicks, Carver. Come on.
Why not? Why not, Joe? Why couldn't they? Why couldn't they lose to the Knicks? Embiid, by the time he gets to April, he could barely walk too. By the time he gets into that spot, I think they could beat them in a series. Maybe I'm nuts. I think the way that they're playing now, how their defensive now they got I get it. They got nobody who could guard Embiid. I don't disagree with that. They got nobody who could guard Embiid. I mean, you would think they'd have Mitchell Robinson back by the playoffs, but even he ain't guarding him either. Okay, but okay, well, you let him get his, and you cut everyone else off. Why can't you do that? I think they could beat him over a 7-game series. The amoeba defense. Speaking of Embiid, he missed his 12th game last night, Joe. He can now only miss 5 more games to remain eligible for the MVP. He was plus 120 favorite last week. Now he's plus 450 because the games are winding down, and he's not going to be eligible for this award.
I'd still take a shot on him at plus 450. I mean, come on. No.
Well, it's like Davis said to me before, and I didn't even think of this, Joe. Like, if that happened, would they just dress him, start the game, have him foul somebody, and take him out? It counts as a game played, right? If it actually got to that spot, would they kind of make a little bit of a mockery of it? And I think maybe they would, because he does want to win that again. Right now, Joker's even money. SGA's plus 350. Then Embiid, Luka, Giannis, everyone else is 60 or more,
I like
or longer to do it. You want to take a shot with Luka, huh? You want to go dance with Luka Doncic?
Yes.
I'm always worried about him in the last couple months. He always seems to run out of gas. Like, look at these games he's having now.
You're calling him out like the guy with the tread. You're calling him. You're like that heckler in the stands.
I don't even mean it like that. I just mean his butt physically. I think he does so much from November to March that by the time April comes out, it's like he does too much himself, Joe. I don't think he has enough help.
Nobody there.
And
if
he got nobody
was
there.
Playing,
yeah, but Kyrie, I don't. He's not a help, Joe. He's no help whatsoever, is what that guy is. He's no help whatsoever. Burn your money with him, indeed. So there you go, the MVP odds. When I come back, actually, we'll slide these in real fast. The best and the worst against the spread so far this year in the NBA. The Thunder, Joe, 30-16-1. ATS, Magic, Sixers, Knicks, Jazz, and Pacers are up there. The worst. Hawks still have the title. 11-35, Joe, against the number. And some good teams on that worst list. Nuggets, Heat, Bucks, Suns, all on there as well because they're usually given some fat points. All right, we'll come back and finish the NBA. 5 games tonight. Ferrall Coast to Coast. Here on a Tuesday, Carver, High, and Joe in for Scotty. We're back on the grid right after this.
End up winning outright as a 4.5-point underdog at kickoff last week. They're headed back to the Super Bowl yet again. They were phenomenal, Vinny, in the first half, and they were phenomenal against Miami in the first half, too.
A lot of motivated players, and look, you got to hand it to them. Youthful players playing in a great system by Spagnuolo, and we know how great of a big game coordinator Steve Spagnuolo is.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Oh, it's a beautiful time. NBA players are going wild. If I had to guess, a lot of people are going to get real angry. No defense, no defense, no defense. See, I want people to understand this, okay? Because we're always honest. When I take that big pause, that means we're thinking about betting big.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Your 24/7 sports wagering network.
We'll look at the Heisman
The
Trophy
early line.
and what it all means. Individual success.
You should have tried to get something for Anthony Rendon. Not bought at the deadline.
Newswire.
We're getting a lot of news, trades, cuts, and some movement in terms of starting quarterbacks,
Ferrall
backup quarterbacks.
coast to coast.
I want to watch great players make buckets and win games.
Game time
I
decisions.
have no idea what the heck the Blazers are doing and what they
In-game live. Prime time.
Yard for a grand slam.
The bottom of the fourth inning in a 12-2 baseball game. We got football scores going on at Wrigley right now.
Sports
That
Rage
was good
Late
betting.
Night.
We waited for 1.5. We got paid
We
information. Did like a 2.5. Jumped on
There's
it.
no taking weeks off in golf betting ever. These are the best weeks to bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
And we are back for El Coast to Coast here on a Tuesday. Carver High and Joe Lisi in for Scotty on SportsGrid and SportsGrid Radio. Great to have everybody with us. All right, Joe. Let me quickly let's do the ATS one more time, guys, just because I didn't really get to Joe's thoughts on that back end of it, which of course was the really bad teams. The Hawks have been 11-35 against the spread all year long. But there are good teams, Joe, on that worst list, which is why it's tough because they're usually laying a ton of sticks every single night. Nuggets, Heat, Bucks, Suns, all on the worst side of things as well. So it hasn't been very profitable to back some of those really good teams.
No, but the Hawks got off the mat. Like 2 weeks ago, they were like 3 and then like 23 against the number. They put together some wins. So you got to find diamonds in the rough, Carver. I think the Bucks will get it right a little bit, maybe, after a couple of games with Doc Rivers, but I'm not going to back them in the first couple of games. We didn't take it on Friday night when they played Cleveland.
Yeah.
They lost the ball game outright. They lose again last night. So maybe about another 1 or 2 games, I'll be back on the Bucks.
Yep, I'm with you. I think it's a little wait-and-see approach now that we've got Doc in town. Over and under, Joe only cares about the over list because he don't play unders in the NBA. Joe never... Joe doesn't play unders in the NBA. He doesn't know what the word under means. Over, Sixers, 28-17. So how about this, Joe? 2 best teams to the over playing each other tonight. Sixers and the Warriors out in San Francisco. Bucks, Pacers, Jazz, and Hawks are all on that list. Under, Nuggets, Grizzlies, Heat, Knicks, Clippers, and Trailblazers on the underside there for you.
Got to take the under. That's an under. 76ers and
That's
Warriors.
an under.
Yeah.
Oh, because they're the 2 best over teams. That means you're taking the under night. I will. Yeah, I'll give you the numbers, Joe. That's the last game I'm going to do. I will give you those numbers in a moment. Why don't we start?
Make a negative.
Two positives. Joe loves this stuff. 2 positives make a negative. He's going to go there. Back to back for the Lakers, Joe. We'll start the games tonight as they are in Atlanta. They got thumped in Houston last night by the Rockets. Here's what we do know. Anthony Davis is out. He's not playing on a back-to-back. People probably thought LeBron wasn't either. I watched him tell the reporters I plan on playing. Now, him saying he plans on playing, Joe, doesn't mean he necessarily is until we get there. So as of right now, plans on playing. Murray for the Hawks is questionable. He's got a hamstring injury. So this is 6.5. Hawks minus 6.5, a hefty total of 247.5 because the Hawks play no D. Joe, I'm on the Lakers tonight with the 6.5. And quite honestly, I don't care if LeBron plays or not. You just saw it up there. Hawks, they don't cover numbers. When they're getting points, they don't cover the number. When they're giving points, they don't cover the number. And I think the Laker guy, Russell's been hot. And he ain't going to play. He might, with no LeBron and AD, he might score 35 tonight. So I'm going to take the Lakers with the 6.5 here, Joe.
Look at the head nod. I'm like all with you. I'm like all in. That's it. Sign me up, Johnny. Where do you want to go, Carver? I'm all in with it. What do you want to take? LeBron 40 plus? You want to take his bounds tonight? What do you want to do?
Well, why don't we do what I just said? Why don't we go Russell? Why don't we key Russell here tonight for the Lakers? I mean, I don't like doing it usually. You want to play Reeves? Who do you want to play? You want to get Reeves in there? He's going to get more burn, more shots?
No,
he's killed me the other night, too. I know. I needed him for 3 threes last week, and he didn't get it done. I don't want to go back to him.
Grayson Allen and Reeves are the same player.
We have a few guys that have killed me in the past week, missing by 1-3, both of those guys. So we both like the Lakers, Joe, and maybe we'll get a little D'Lo going tonight, a little D'Angelo Russell in the mix. First game of the TV doubleheaders in Boston. So the Celtics, big second half comeback last night at home against the Pelicans. Now they have the Pacers coming into town. Halliburton back in, Joe. He's missed the last couple of games. Tyrese Halliburton is going to play. They'll have Siakam out there as well. Turner's questionable. Matherin's questionable. For the Celtics side of things, Porzingis questionable. Horford out. So we'll see what happens there. Celtics minus 7.5. Another fat total here, Joe. 245.5. But Halliburton's playing, and usually that pushes the Pacers to the over.
It's possible. I lean to the over, but give me Siakam tonight. Everybody's going to be on Halliburton because of retire. How about a little Siakam, 25 plus? What do you think about that?
Good, Joe. I don't mind that. He had 30 the other night. I could get involved, Joe. You want to push it to 25 with Siakam? Let's do it.
Yeah.
I like the Pacers with the 7.5. Might not win the game. I think Boston's second night. Pacers come in with a fresh Halliburton. I could see them covering that 7.5. So I don't really want any part of the total, but I do like the 7.5 that we're going to have there. Both teams on the back-to-back at the Garden as the Jazz go over to face the Knicks. They were in Brooklyn last night. They got hammered by the Nets. The Knicks won in Charlotte, so the Knicks are actually the team that traveled here for the back-to-back. Minus 4.5 for New York. 231.5 is the total. Anunoby's questionable. We know that Randall's going to be out, obviously. Looks like everybody's good to go for the Jazz.
I'm going to take the Jazz. How about on the money line outright? What do you think about that?
Don't like it. I
like the over. I like the over.
You like the over, huh?
The Jazz. Yeah, Knicks have been playing unders last couple of games.
They have.
So now we got a team that you say plays no defense. No defense.
Jazz play no defense whatsoever.
All right, so let's go with the over.
They gave up a $147 in the Nets last night.
Okay, so why aren't we going over?
Because if the game's played at the Knicks style, I don't know if it gets there. Who's scoring? Like, let's say they score $120. Who's scoring all those points for the DiVincenzo? Going to have another big night? Is that what you're telling me? 25 plus from him? Because you know Brunson will get 30. Somebody else has to fill in.
Tonight, DiVincenzo.
You want to alt it?
What? You want to take his threes? I'll do the threes. I'm not going to alt
his threes. Yeah, I don't want
to.
He's
a 3-point specialist. The kid played at Nova.
Specialist is a little rough. I wouldn't go specialist. All right,
he's a sharpshooter. He was born in the Raptors of MSG.
Relax.
What are you kidding? The kids. He was born in the Raptors in the Pavilion. He's a Philly kid. Come on.
Not exactly John Paxton and Craig Elo here, Joe.
All right,
let's be fair. The Raptors are in Chicago against your Bulls. Bulls minus 6.5, 225.5 is the total. Your Bulls quickly doubtful. A couple guys are out for the Bulls. I mean, Levine's been out for a while. This is your squad. You got to lay to 6.5 tonight, right?
I laid it 7, and they won against the Trailblazers Sunday night. Okay, they won by a hair. They laid 7. Yeah. They won by 8. Is tonight the DeRozan night? Is tonight a 25 plus from DeRozan or Kobe White?
I don't think so. I'm on the Raptors plus the 6.5.
I'm going to take Kobe with the 3s. Give me Kobe White with the 3s.
And finally, the Sixers are at Golden State, as we mentioned. This number, Joe, is 234.5. These were the two best teams we just gave you to the over. so far this year. But, Joe, you got to remember, a lot of guys out for the Sixers. -4.5 for the Warriors is the number. Embiid is questionable. He's missed the last 2 games. Looks like kind of like a game-time decision type of deal. Maxey is out. He's not playing. We know that. Several other guys are questionable for the Sixers. You know, this is hard, Joe. This is one where, honestly, when we're on the radio tonight, we'll get a little bit better feel. We'll know if Embiid's definitely in. I think that we kind of got to wait this out for a few hours before tip.
Under. Confident. Under.
You don't care. You ain't scared. You
Under.
ain't scared.
Sell.
Under.
Sell, Mortimer. Sell. Sold.
Because everyone's looking at that number I just gave out. The 2 best over teams this year, they're going to go over the number. Joe says, no, I'm going the other way. Sell, sell, sell. All right, Joe, there you go. Tonight's NBA. We'll come back. We've got Adam Kaplan today from the Senior Bowl. Joe will be back later. We'll do all of tonight's college basketball. And there's a lot of sizzle plays for Joe tonight in College Rack. A lot of sizzle plays. Coast to coast. We're back after this.
End up winning outright as a 4.5-point underdog at kickoff last week. They're headed back to the Super Bowl yet again. They were phenomenal, Vinny, in the first half, and they were phenomenal against Miami in the first half, too.
A lot of motivated players, and look, you got to hand it to them. Youthful players playing in a great system by Spagnuolo, and we know how great of a big game coordinator Steve Spagnuolo is.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Oh, it's a beautiful time. NBA players are going wild. If I had to guess, a lot of people are going to get real angry. No defense, no defense, no defense. See, I want people to understand this, okay? Because we're always honest. When I take that big pause, that means we're thinking about betting big.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network.
We'll look at the Heisman
The
Trophy
early line.
and what it all means. Individual success.
You should have tried to get something for Anthony Rendon. Not bought at the deadline.
Newswire.
We're getting a lot of news, trades, cuts, and some movement in terms of starting quarterbacks, backup
Pharrell
quarterbacks.
coast to coast.
I want to watch great players make buckets and win games.
Game time
I have
decisions.
no idea what the heck the Blazers are doing and what they
In-game live. Prime time.
yard for a grand slam.
The bottom of the 4th inning in a 12-2 baseball game. We got football scores going on at Wrigley right now.
Sports
That
Rage
was
Late
good betting.
Night.
We waited for 1.5. We got paid.
We did.
information, did like a 2.5. Jumped on it.
There's no taking weeks off in golf betting ever. These are the best weeks to bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
And we are back for El Coast to Coast on a Tuesday. Carver High in for Scotty here on SportsGrid and SportsGrid Radio. Great to have everybody with us. Always great to have our Sports Grid NFL insider Adam Kaplan with us on a Tuesday this week, which I love because I get to talk to him. And he's at the Senior Bowl in a very beautiful Mobile, Alabama this week, Adam. Great weather for the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, honestly, Mike, this is my 23rd year here, and it's usually dreary and rainy. In fact, 2 years ago here, it rained every day, every second, and watching the quarterbacks try to throw was a waste of time. I had to go out and get an umbrella to watch practice. So we're enjoying it. Got my farmer stand back, and it's amazing here, man. It really is. This is where the draft really starts. This is what they say here. And no, that's not the Kremlin in the background. That we're actually in Mobile. But no, it's a great week of scouting. If you're really into the draft, this is where it all starts. I mean, my first, to give you, Mike, the idea of my first Senior Bowl in 2002. Josh McCown was out of Sam Houston State. Okay, he was a transfer. Antoine Randall, who was a quarterback, an option quarterback at IU. He only lined up at receiver here and wound up surprisingly be a second-round pick because he was dominant. David Carr wound up being the first pick overall. Brian Westbrook out of Villanova had a great week, who had a terrific career, but his career ended a little bit prematurely due to knee problems. Deion Branch out of Louisville, who had a very good career. And you might remember Dwight Freeney, a former first-round pick of the Colts, and many others that year. In fact, Larry Foote was here, who has been a long-time assistant coach in the National Football League. Yeah, I remember Larry Foote. So, and guys can stand out sometimes. It's rare that your draft stock will drop. It usually raises it because you get more awareness in the scouting community. But one thing I would tell you, be careful of seeing reporting out there or these so-called draft experts because, Mike, there's no tackling, okay? You can't hit anybody. Quarterbacks typically do very well here. We'll get into one of the quarterbacks that I saw today who was terrific. But the quarterbacks typically do well here. Running backs, again, you can't take them to the ground. They have what's called thud period where you might use an elbow or shoulder, but you can't take them to the ground. And there are only 3 practices. It's Tuesday, it's Wednesday. Thursday, Mike, is a light practice. Friday's a walkthrough, and Saturday's the game.
Wow. So a big week down there. I'm going to ask you in a little bit about who you've seen so far and who is standing out. But we have to begin with a couple things that have gone on coaching-wise here today around the NFL. And a big one, Adam, because I think really the prevailing thought over the past couple of weeks was that Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator for the Lions, was going to get one of these head coaching jobs, specifically the Washington Commander head coaching job. And after today, Adam, that is not happening.
Yeah, this is a surprise. I have to tell you, for those of us who cover the NFL and we know what's going on with Washington, they wanted to make a big splash. Ben Johnson is saying, let's put it this way, headed into the process. That's when they get their list together, guys who they identified. This was the guy. He withdrew his name for the Commanders and any potential with the Seahawks there. And this is interesting because last year, I remember I did report this, that Johnson was going to interview with the Panthers. I'm going to say 14 to 16 hours before that interview with the Panthers was supposed to happen. And by the way, they probably would have hired him if he would have taken the interview and he interviewed well. He probably would have gotten the job, not Frank Reich. But he took his name out. Now, source close to the situation told me that last year, Johnson felt he needed another year of seasoning, and also he'd been on such a meteoric rise. He felt he needed another year, and he also wanted to be around his family more. And look, you can't blame him for that. This one's strange to me. This was, I'm not going to say it was out of the blue. There are always reasons for this, but this one seems to be different from what I gather in the early going here. We'll talk more about this with Ferrall later this week, but this is a stunner. Now, going forward here, right? The Lions, who unfortunately blew that big lead. You and I were not on earlier this week to talk about it, but they got Johnson back, one of the best play callers of the National Football League. This is also good for free agency. If you're a free agent who they like on offense from other teams, you're going to love that Ben Johnson's coming back. This is great for Jared Goff, who's going to have to get his contract redone, and their offensive skill position players. This is stunning. And if you look at the Vegas odds, it wasn't like the lines makers look at what the reporting for this, and a lot of us put out there that Johnson was the clear favorite coming into the process. So now I look at it, Mike McDonald, the young defensive coordinator for the Ravens, you got to look at him. Aaron Glenn is going to get his interview in person. So those would be guys to look at there. And then Seattle, I will say this, Dan Quinn, who a lot of people thought was the favorite coming in, no question because he knows that franchise. There's some other guys there. That one is less certain, to be honest with you.
Let me go back to that for 1 second, Adam, with Washington, because, look, they've got all these defensive guys that they've had these second interviews with. They went to talk to Aaron Glenn today. I think the only guy left that they had the second interview with that's offensive is Slowick from the Texans. Right. Like they just are coming off a defensive-minded coach. We want to run it type of thing with Ron Rivera. They've got the second pick in the draft, which is going to be a quarterback. I mean, Adam, that seems like a spot you got to match an offensive mind up into that job. And they're interviewing and have a lot of defensive guys on their docket.
Yeah, and look, but now McDonald is one of the best young defense coordinators in the league. So on your point, and this is important, coming into every interview, they're going to ask you in these interviews, okay, who's your staff? What's your OC and your DC? If a club is not happy with your list, you're not getting the job. Even if they think a particular coach is the guy they probably want going into the process, if that guy, Mike, does not have a good list, they're not getting the job. And it's just interesting to see how this process played out. Now, you have a first-time GM in Adam Peters with Washington. As I understand, he has personnel control. Now, the owner, Josh Harris, always will make the call in the end, but they'll collaborate with it. So I'm interested to see what they're going to do there. And you're right. Look, Ron Rivera, by the way, the former head coach, had personnel control. It'll be interesting to see what happens with their situation. Also, Seattle, by the way, with Pete Carroll, you mentioned defense. Pete Carroll, no longer the head coach, who had a lot of control. Now it goes to John Snyder's full control of personnel and everything. And this is the first time in his career he's going to do that. He came in with Pete in 2010 with the Seahawks. So those two are the only ones that are open. By the way, it's been an interesting coaching process here with a lot of these hires, and some that were kind of surprising. But Jim Harbaugh, John's older brother, he got the big one with the Chargers, and I'm telling you, they think that they could get this team back on the map.
And then he goes and he takes the director of player personnel from his brother in Baltimore. He goes and snatches him up for the GM job out there. So
it's interesting.
That's a nice little win.
Yeah, Joe Ortiz.
Nice hire.
Joe Ortiz came from Baltimore. Joe's been in personnel forever, probably somewhere around 20 years with Baltimore. I know he hails from the Philly area, Albany area, and he's always wanted to be a GM. And this is good for him. Now I know that Brandon Brown was one of their finalists from the Chargers for that OC job, for that GM job and he still is the assistant GM for the Giants. What I'm told there is Harbaugh and this guy Brandon Brown, they actually knew each other. In fact, Brandon Brown, I believe, spoke at Michigan football, so they knew each other. But the thing is, though, he's new to this role with the Giants. Ortiz has been in personnel way longer. And it makes sense. And by the way, they're moving to a new complex in El Segundo, which is near LAX airport. And they're spend money. People who say the Chargers don't want to spend money, folks, you would lose that bet. They've actually spent a ton of money getting Jim Harbaugh in there.
If you brought Jim Harbaugh in, you've spent money. That immediately goes away. When you spend the kind of money on Jim Harbaugh, that costs a lot. All right, first day there in Mobile, Adam. Tell me a little bit about some guys who have stood out to you. Everybody's always interested about quarterbacks. Anybody catch your eye?
My guy was Michael Pratt out of Tulane. There were 7 quarterbacks there. Now, typically, they'll bring in a couple players from South Alabama. They had a South Alabama quarterback there. But Michael Pratt is a Tulane quarterback. He was really, really good. Now, the comp that I have for him, be careful. This guy was a first-round pick but did not do well. I'm just talking stylistically and length. Christian Ponder, you might remember him. Christian Ponder out of Florida State was awesome here. He had trouble at the next level processing information. He never really made it, but he was a first-round pick. He became a first-round pick because he had a great week here. Pratt was a star on day one. And also, here's one for you for defense. I'll give you a defensive one. Max Melton, the corner out of Rutgers. His brother Bo is with the Packers, who was a 7th-round pick last year of the Seahawks. His dad Gary played in the NFL. Moved pretty well, willing to be physical. And Mike, as I said earlier, it's mostly zone coverage. I'm told cover 1 and cover 3. Because they don't want anyone getting hurt. You're not game planning here. But Max Melton's a kid to take a look at. And again, there are 2 more days of practice. But for those of you who are really into their draft, keep an eye on Michael Pratt, the quarterback from Tulane, who I'm told will go within the first 3 rounds. But a couple more days here, he could absolutely help himself.
Yeah, and that's a lot of quarterbacks. I mean, you talk about the first 3 rounds. We already know there's 5, maybe 6 guys that are in the mix in the first round of the draft. So a big quarterback draft coming up. I like the way they've changed it this year too, Adam, right? It used to be, it would be like staffs of teams that just missed the playoffs. Didn't they take like a position coach from a couple different teams, and they're kind of running things down there this week? I like how they've changed that.
Yeah. Yeah, in fact, when I first started covering it, it was either the runner-up teams to like the last two teams that didn't make the playoffs, or sometimes it's like the worst teams. But the bottom line is, in fact, there's such a value, Mike, in having your staff here. The Niners, when they were coaching in 2019, drafted a bunch of players from the Senior Bowl. One of them was Deebo Samuel. I think they got that one right. But you're right.
Yeah.
So Terrell Williams is a D-line coach for the Titans this year. He's kind of heading up one squad. Yeah, I like the way that they're mixing up because and Jeff Ulbrich, the D coordinator for the Jets, they're giving guys a chance to coach here and get in front of NFL people. It's actually a really smart thing.
20 seconds, Adam. I'm sure all the talk at all the dinner tables and the lounges has been Dan Campbell on Sunday night, right? I'm sure everybody's been talking about how Dan Campbell.
It's funny, Mike. Well, you're absolutely right. That actually came up with a couple agents and NFL people because all you're doing is standing and watching practice with them. You're absolutely right. They did come up. Most people did not.
Unbelievable. Adam, enjoy. We'll see you later this week down there in Mobile. Adam Kaplan, our SportsGrid NFL insider, coast to coast. We're back after this.
End up winning outright as a 4.5-point underdog at kickoff last week. They're headed back to the Super Bowl yet again. They were phenomenal, Vinny, in the first half, and they were phenomenal against Miami in the first half, too.
A lot of motivated players, and look, you got to hand it to them. Youthful players playing in a great system by Spagnuolo, and we know how great of a big game coordinator Steve Spagnuolo is.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Oh, it's a beautiful time. NBA players are going wild. If I had to guess, a lot of people are going to get real angry. No defense, no defense, no defense. See, I want people to understand this, okay? Because we're always honest. When I take that big pause, that means we're thinking about betting big.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network.
We'll look at the Heisman
The
Trophy
early line.
and what it all means. Individual success.
You should have tried to get something for Anthony Rendon. Not bought at the deadline.
Newswire.
We're getting a lot of news, trades, cuts, and some movement in terms of starting quarterbacks,
Farrell,
backup quarterbacks.
coast to coast.
I want to watch great players make buckets and win games.
Game time decisions.
No idea what the heck the Blazers are doing and what they
In-game live. Prime time.
yard for a grand slam.
The bottom of the fourth inning in a 12-2 baseball game. We got football scores going on at Wrigley right now.
Sports Rage
That was
Late
good betting.
Night.
We waited for 1.5. We got paid.
We did.
Didn't like the 2.5. Jumped on
There's
it.
no taking weeks off in golf betting ever. These are the best weeks to bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
And we are back for El Coast to Coast here on a Tuesday. Carver High and Joe Lisi in for Scotty on SportsGrid and SportsGrid Radio. Great to have everybody with us. BetMGM, they are getting you ready. Big game 58 next Sunday, of course. It is almost here, and here's what BetMGM is going to have for you. How about betting $5 and getting $158 instantly? What? You got to download the BetMGM Sportsbook app on iOS or Android or visit BetMGM.com. Sign up and deposit at least $5 into your newly created account. This is for new customers. Place a wager in the amount of at least $5 at standard odds price. Once you have placed a bet, you will receive $158 in bonus bets regardless of the outcome of your wager. You got to use bonus code SG158. There you go, Joe. BetMGM has you all set up for the big game. Chiefs and the Niners, they will be there. Okay, Joe, we still have a lot of college basketball that we have to get to for tonight. Very big slate. Last night was Mondays usually get those one or two big matchups. Tonight, it is a full card. Lots of sizzle plays that Joe is going to have working. Let's work through the first leg of these, Joe. South Carolina on the road at Tennessee tonight in the SEC. 13.5 is the number here for the Vols. 135.5 is the total. Georgia Tech has North Carolina coming in. That one at 8.5 now for the Tar Heels. Marquette and Villanova -1.5. System play, Joe. System play for Villanova tonight at home against number 9 Marquette. We also have Texas Tech and TCU, the skunk, welcoming the Red Raiders into town. And Illinois and Ohio State, short road favorite for the Fighting Illini. Which one of those, Joe, is catching your number here early on?
I like Texas Tech plus the 5.5. I don't know if they win it, but I think they're within the number. Did jump on the under, Carver. It's juiced heavily. 118 to the over. I went under 144.5. Let's get back to old Red Raider basketball. You know, 4 corners and bounds and rebounds and pound the glass. Old school. Let's go. Under. But I like the Red Raiders tonight. I don't like South Carolina. That line is a little fishy. Tennessee and Rick Barnes, they usually run teams out of the gym in Knoxville. That's the only thing. I mean, I told you who I like. There's a Big 12, big double-digit underdog that I think is a little juicy. Is it on this slate?
We're gonna get there. I've got 3 boards of games, Joe. Let me get through one board at a time here. I do like Villanova, of course.
Yeah, you like Nova. I don't like that.
Because why do I like Nova, Joe? Tell me why. Tell me why I like system play. The unranked team favored over the ranked team tonight at home. We will go with it. Recently, it has been very hot. We have 2 of them tonight. That is going to be one of them. DeCourcy was telling me earlier that Ohio State very desperate at home tonight against Illinois. But like I agree with him. He told me, even though that's the case, he thinks that Illinois is going to get the job done in Columbus against the Buckeyes. So I lean good there. And, I want to take South Carolina with you, Joe, but I think I'm with you on this aspect. It does seem a little fishy. South Carolina's played good. That's a lot of points. Very strange. Tennessee coming off a subpar performance. They won, but they kind of messed around with Vandy over the weekend. I could see them dropping a hammer on South Carolina at home, but I ain't going to lay it, Joe, that's for sure. I might just not get involved because it's a little bit too much for me.
If I had to bet it, I would lay it because Barnes is a coin flip on the road. Anytime Tennessee's on the road, they can lose. It doesn't matter if they're playing an unranked team, but when they're at home and they're laying double digits, more times than not, they run them out of the gym. I mean, they're a home-based team, Tennessee. That's why they get knocked out of the tournament so easy, because they can't win on the road. That's the problem with Barnes. He's a glass house.
Home-based team. A home-based team is what they are.
They're like 26-1 at home, and they're like under 500 on the road. They get like a top 5 ranking in the tourney. They get knocked out every year. They never make it past the Sweet 16. If they get there.
Here's what else I have for you, Joe. George Washington visits Dayton tonight. Now, Dayton lost at Richmond over the weekend. They are still ranked. They're laying 12.5. George Washington hasn't been awful this year. I'm kind of thinking about George Washington with the 13.5 in this one. Syracuse and Boston College, the Fighting Bluets get together in Chestnut Hill. Iowa is a 1.5-point favorites at Assembly Hall against Indiana. Kansas State, what is that, Joe? System play. Unranked team
System.
favored over the ranked team. 2.5 system play for Kansas.
They're dead to me. I took them plus. They were getting 13.5 against Houston. Before I blinked, they were down 26, cost me a parlay on Saturday. The Wildcats are dead to me. The line that smells is that Iowa. Indiana sucks. You're telling me
Indiana's awful. They're awful.
How are they only 1-point favorites in Assembly Hall?
You're right. It's that stuck out to me as well. They stink. And Iowa being just 1.5-point favorites, I could definitely see the Hoosiers tonight maybe make that very sweat. Well, I was going to ask you about the Egg Bowl. The Egg Bowl on the hardwood tonight. Mississippi State and Ole Miss -1.5 for the Rebs.
Gotta lay it with Ole Miss. Gotta lay it at home. Ole Miss, another team.
Mississippi State's a blue collar team. They're a blue collar team, Joe.
Yeah, but in that field house in Starkville, they're good. They always play Kentucky tough at home. On the road, though, in the Egg Bowl, I gotta lay it with Ole Miss. They're too athletic. They can run. Ole Miss pushes tempo.
Kansas State for me on that board, and I think I'm going to talk myself into George Washington, believe it or not, on the road at Dayton.
When the show starts, I'm going to be on Indiana in-game. I'm going to be cursing.
You want to take Indiana? I'll go with you on Indiana if you want to go with. You want to take them?
But here's the thing, Carver. At 1.5, they got to win the game. Do we wait like 5 minutes in? See if
you want to grab them, see if we can get them at 3.5, 4.5. You want to see if we can get them a little bit more, something juicy.
That'll be the night that they start on an 18-2 run. We'll be chasing the whole game.
Mm-hmm. That's usually what happens to us in spots like this. That's for sure. Next, I think that the game that you were looking for, this is where we are going to find it. Oklahoma State visits Lawrence tonight against Kansas, who really, I know they're 8th in the country. They haven't been playing great. They lost at Iowa State over the weekend. But this is a fat number, Joe. 16.5 for Kansas here tonight. A couple of the others, Utah State laying a big number against San Jose State. Miami and NC State get together in Raleigh. Michigan, who stinks this year, is in East Lansing against Michigan State, but it's a big number, 12.5 for a rivalry game, and a really good late-night Mountain West game. Not as late night as usual. It's a 9 o'clock East tip. But San Diego State catching 2.5 at Fort Collins against the Rams, who really let me down on Saturday in that overtime loss at Wyoming. They really let me down, Joe.
I like all the dogs. I like Oak State. That's the best one I like on that list. Oak State, I think comes to play in Lawrence tonight. I like Miami plus the points. I think they can win the ball game outright. I like San Diego State plus the points. And if you want to know if Michigan's ever going to cover a line, it's in this rivalry game. 12.5, I think is way too much. But I'm going under. San Diego State, Colorado State. 142.5, I think, is too high for them.
That is a big number for those two. It is kind of high. I can see the under in that one. I want to take Michigan, Joe. I want to take Michigan. They suck, man. They are so bad this year.
What did they do against Purdue over the weekend?
They gave up 120 points. I mean, they got absolutely destroyed in that game against Purdue. That was last week. Hold on, Joe. I'm going to get you that.
No, they played Saturday night. It was like a 3-point game. They played Iowa. It wasn't Purdue. It was Iowa.
It was Iowa. Iowa was 88-78. They lost on Saturday. Last week they lost to Purdue. They lost by 32, 99-67 to Purdue when they played them last week.
But they covered that line against Iowa, Michigan, right?
No, they didn't. No, they were 1.5-point favorites in that game. That's kind of the same thing as Indiana tonight. They were 1.5-point favorites over Iowa at home, and they lost by 10. Now Iowa again, 1.5 points on the road here, favored at Indiana. It's tough. Michigan's awful, Joe. They're awful. We can't back them. They're awful.
It's 12.5 in a rivalry game, though. Michigan
I don't think we can do that. They're 7-13, Joe. They're 7-13.
Michigan State got ran out of the gym by Wisconsin the other night. Come on.
I don't see how you can play this game.
You think Michigan State's going to boat race them by 20? It's Michigan State. Nah. Let's take Juwan.
I can't do
like
it. I'm
that.
not in.
I
I'm
like
not
the
in.
better
You got a
more
better
than Indiana.
chance. You got a better chance of getting me in on Oklahoma State than Michigan. I can't play Michigan tonight. They're awful, Joe. They're a bad basketball team.
I'm going to get in on
I just
both.
can't do it. I'm going to get in on both. I'll tell you what I am with you. I love Miami tonight in Raleigh against NC State. So let's get Larinaga moving here as well. You're so greedy. You really are. No. Just give me the 3.5. Just give me the 3.5, Joe. That's good enough for me. I don't need any more than that. Clemson's laying 15.5 against Louisville. I didn't have room on the board for that. UNLV minus 8.5 against Fresno State. And Gonzaga, late night, 11 East tip, laying 15.5 against Loyola Marymount. Not the same Gonzaga team this year, Joe, that's for sure. So laying big numbers with them out there in the WCC has not been fun.
Until they play San Francisco, then they bow race them every time they play San Fran.
Until they play San Francisco, exactly. Only 2 hockey games tonight because the All-Star break is this weekend. There's only a few teams that are still playing. Most teams are already on the extended break off. All these teams will get the extended break next week. Columbus is in St. Louis against the Blues. Now, let me tell you this, Joe, since you always love this stuff. The Blues have won 5 games in a row. This is the last game. Columbus has been on a long trip, 5 games. They've been in Calgary, Edmonton, Seattle. Now they're stopping in St. Louis before a week plus off for these players. Do you think they care about this game tonight in St. Louis, Joe? No. We're laying it. The 1.5 with the Blues plus $1.50. We're going puck line. They're hot. They've won 5 in a row. They're going to hammer the Blue Jackets tonight, Joe. What do you think about that?
Over 6.5?
Why can't you just lay the 1.5 with me? Why do you got to do that?
The 1.5 goals over. You say hammer them. I'm thinking 10 goals. I mean,
what happens when they win 5-0? What happens when they win 5-0?
Can't win 5-2? 5-3?
No, I don't want him to score. I don't want him to score, Joe. I want him to pound him. I'm on the 1.5. You do whatever you want to do. The Kraken are in San Jose against the Sharks. They're at the Shark Tank. Kraken minus 250, plus 200 for the Sharks, a flat 6 to total. I've been here and there sprinkling the Sharks at home on these money lines, Joe. I'm going to try it again tonight, plus 2 bills for the Sharks at home.
I'm with you. I like the Sharks tonight. Sharks in the
Now listen, the Sharks are awful. But sometimes you can catch them in these spots at home. Maybe the other team's a little sleepy. Maybe even the 1.5, Joe. We'll see what we can do there if we want. We'll talk about that game. Doesn't start till 10:30 East. So maybe we can get ourselves a little more situated on the radio show tonight with the hockey. So there you go. Hockey and the college hoops for tonight. We will come back, Joe. I've got a couple of other things for you before we get out of here today. Ferrall Coast to Coast on a Tuesday. Carver High and Joe in for Scotty. SportsGrid Radio. We will come back. And yes, Joe, believe it or not, wrap this puppy up for a Tuesday and get you ready for game time decisions. We're back on the grid right after this.
End up winning outright as a 4.5-point underdog at kickoff last week. They're headed back to the Super Bowl yet again. They were phenomenal, Vinny, in the first half, and they were phenomenal against Miami in the first half, too.
A lot of motivated players, and look, you got to hand it to them. Youthful players playing in a great system by Spagnuolo, and we know how great of a big game coordinator Steve Spagnuolo is.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Oh, it's a beautiful time. NBA players are going wild. If I had to guess, a lot of people are going to get real angry. No defense, no defense, no defense. See, I want people to understand this, okay? Because we're always honest. When I take that big pause, that means we're thinking about betting big.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Your 24/7 sports wagering network.
Well, look at the Heisman
The
Trophy
early line.
and what it all means. Individual success.
You should have tried to get something for Anthony Rendon. Not bought at the deadline.
Newswire.
We're getting a lot of news, trades, cuts, and some movement in terms of starting quarterbacks,
Ferrall
backup quarterbacks.
coast to coast.
I want to watch great players make buckets and win games.
Game time
You
decisions.
have no idea what the heck the Blazers are doing and what they
In-game live. Prime time.
yard for a grand slam.
The bottom of the fourth inning in a 12-2 baseball game. We got football scores going on at Wrigley right now.
Sports Rage
That was good
Late
betting.
Night.
We waited for 1.5. We got paid
You
information. Did like a 2.5. Jumped on
There's
it.
no taking weeks off in golf betting ever. These are the best weeks to bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
And we are back for El Coast to Coast here on a Tuesday. Carver High and Joe and for Scotty on SportsGrid and SportsGrid Radio. All right, Joe, before we get out of here, now I know that nobody cares about this stuff. It really is. It's become like they don't even play the game anymore, the dopey Pro Bowl. You know, they name all these guys to the game. Nobody ever plays. So what ends up happening is, Joe, like this is the week now where, especially now you know who's in the Super Bowl, so they got to fill the slots for all the guys that made the Pro Bowl for the Niners and for the Chiefs, and then everybody else says no. I saw today, these are some of the guys who are going to be part of the Pro Bowl festivities now this weekend. Just now, Gardner Minshew, AFC Pro Bowl quarterback. Geno Smith, who you'll agree, nowhere near as good a year as last year for Geno. Geno will be there. They also put Stroud in. Now, Stroud had a good year, as we know, and Baker Mayfield also is going now from the NFC. But Gardner Minshew, Joe, that's tough. That's tough. You got to get a lot of guys say no before Gardner Minshew gets named to Pro Bowl.
Well, Gardner threw more touchdown passes than Huntley did last year. I mean,
Huntley was the biggest disgrace of all time. Now he was like the ninth alternate, and he made the Pro Bowl. So I guess this is better than that was. But man, like find another way. It really is. Just give the guys who are supposed to be in it their recognition and not embarrass the process by naming guys who really have no business being there. Joe, I will see you tonight. Carver and Lisi, 8 p.m. East on SportsGrid Radio, where we'll go through all of tonight's games and I'm sure get mad at each other about something. Somebody screwing something up in terms of a parlay or something like that. Great job as always. Great job by Mafia and the crew. Game Time Decisions is next. We are back here tomorrow, me and Joe, for Coast to Coast on a Wednesday as well. Everybody have a great night. Cash a ton of tickets. GTD is next. Ferrall Coast to Coast. We'll see you back here tomorrow on the grid.